Today on the Design and Prosper podcast, we are discussing all things print. We're going to be sharing all the key success factors for making sure print and production goes smoothly. You're listening to Design and Prosper, episode 139. Hey, I'm Kris. And I'm Donna. Welcome into this beautiful space where we have open and honest conversations about running a graphic design business.
We'd love to help you throw imposter syndrome to the curb and position yourself as a high-end graphic designer.
Yes, and each week we'll share empowering advice, practical tips, and strategies to help you thrive in business. We are so happy you're here.
Welcome, everybody.
Hello, hello. So, if you're a designer, chances are someday you're going to have to send a file to print, even in this digital world.
Yep.
Right? Especially brand designers.
Yeah.
We cover off all aspects of print.
Yeah, print is not dead, right?
Yeah, no. Absolutely not. And it can be daunting if you're not overly familiar with printing, right? If you're a digital-based designer and you've predominantly been in web, or you're in socials and your whole playground is this gorgeous digital landscape, but then you land a beautiful big client who wants all the bells and whistles. They might want signage, they might want brochures, they might want posters, menus, invites, postcards, the whole spectrum, right? So what are you going to do? How are you going to handle that and stay sane?
Yeah. It's a whole new world.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
But you're in luck because you're listening to two designers right now who have a ton of print experience.
Yeah.
We have sent literally, I would say thousands of projects to print over our decades of design experience. And we're going to share our best tips with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So brace yourself. There are a few tips. So first of all, we want to talk about why you need to be good at print and production. Okay, there are some really good reasons for you to get your head around this. So essentially, it positions you as the expert, right? Delivering a high quality printed product says to your clients that you are a pro and you know what you are doing. And it's not dropping the ball at the very end of a very creative, very expensive process for your client, where we're really making sure we see it through and get it over the line. And that print part is really crucial.
Yeah. And print and production is really stressful for clients.
Yeah.
It's really stressful for clients if they have to manage it by themselves on their own. It's just a big, unknown, scary world. And when you take care of that for them, it makes them feel so taken care of. When you sweep in and just brilliantly handle this complicated aspect of their brand implementation, it makes the whole, it's like the beautiful big bow on the brand.
I love that. That's exactly right. It's that really taking that stress away is everything for them. I love that, Kris. I love the big bow. Imagining that on every print production job that you do.
Yep.
And another benefit of really knowing what you're talking about is that you, as the designer, get to ensure brand consistency and quality. I think that's why Kris and I were so passionate about print in our careers, because we're a little bit controlling.
Yeah.
Just a little bit. We wanted to make sure that that end result was fulfilled in a way that we had envisaged that from the beginning, right? You know, we had a vision for this thing. And if we weren't there to take care of that last little piece of the puzzle, often the wheels would fall off and the end result would not be what we were dreaming about. So having an understanding of the print production process meant that we could spot mistakes, problems, issues a mile off. We're across it. But when you don't have experience or don't have that understanding, things can go under the radar, and that's when we get really disappointed with that final result. So understanding this part of your business is really, really essential.
Yeah. I would even say, even if you're primarily a website developer or website designer, I would be very surprised if a print project didn't fall into your lap.
Yeah, right.
I would be very surprised.
Yeah.
It's going to happen.
It is going to happen. Absolutely. Especially for those designers who are designing in the digital world, if you really understand and have some print knowledge, that will ensure your design translates from the screen to the physical form. Because often when we're designing on screen, everything looks different. And then when we actually print it out, even if we're testing, as soon as we send a design to print, even if it's to our dodgy little inkjet, we can see straight away any issues that might be arising. So having some really solid print production knowledge can make sure that whatever you're seeing on screen translates beautifully into printed form.
Yeah. And we're going to get into just a little bit about the different types of printing. And it's interesting you say about the digital printers, like, so if you've got your little dodgy inkjet at home, it's a lot more forgiving, actually, the kind of print quality you'll get out of there. But if you send that same file to an offset printer, we'll get into what that means in a little bit, but it's going to be really crisp, it's going to be really clear, and it's going to reveal all the sins of that file. And it's interesting because I'm a big jigsaw puzzler, right? I don't know if I've mentioned it on the podcast before. I probably have. I love beautiful jigsaw puzzles. And there's this one that I was working on recently that's so beautiful. Like the artist or the illustrator obviously is such a beautiful illustrator, and they've probably been approached by this puzzle company. We love your work. Can we get your artwork, or can we pay you for your artwork for this puzzle? And I could tell because you get so down and deep with a jigsaw puzzle, right? You're down into the little pixels, right? Because you're like these tiny little pieces on a 1,000-piece puzzle. And I could really tell that they'd done that in Procreate and the resolution wasn't high enough.
Oh.
And I was forgiving of that because it was, I understand it. And, or maybe I shouldn't have been forgiving. Maybe because of my print knowledge, I should have been like, that should have been taken into consideration. That should have been better. And it's just an interesting thing that I think people would notice, like it's a bit dodgy. And everything else about the production was beautiful with that puzzle, but I could tell that the resolution wasn't high enough.
So that's the file, right? The file wasn't set up properly, which we'll go into a little bit later as well. We'll be talking about different file formats. But that is really interesting because a jigsaw puzzle, really, you're getting granular with that, like literally piece by piece. That's so essential that the production quality is high. Especially, I know Kris doesn't do just any puzzles, everybody. Kris's puzzles are stunning. They're so beautiful. You almost want to put them up on your wall. So, yeah, I can imagine that would have thrown you for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's all about the pixels versus vector thing as well, which, you know, we can talk about as well. But it's just really interesting when you're a digital-based designer and you're just working with pixels all the time. It's so different. Print is so different.
So different.
Colorways are so different. We're not talking about screen colors anymore. We're not talking about RGB and the different hex codes and all that sort of thing. We are talking about CMYK or Pantone. It's very different.
Very, very different. Absolutely. And this is a biggie, right? We as designers can make choices that keep printing costs within budget if we understand print production.
Yeah.
Okay. Otherwise, we're just going, we'll have whatever. We'll have this, we'll have that, we'll have embossing, we'll have cropping, we'll have that. If we don't understand it, we can completely blow a client's budget, and also we can completely blow a client's expectations and joy because we're going to squash that. We're going to go, oh, my design I allocated this really beautiful emboss or this really beautiful die cut, and unfortunately it just blows your budget out of the water. So you'll be able to make those really good choices about your design and the trajectory of your design because you'll know the limitations of the print process and the budget the client has, right?
Yeah.
It's so important. That's a biggie.
Yeah. Knowledge is power.
Yeah.
Knowledge is choice. You don't want to throw yourself under the bus by presenting this fantastic solution. Might be a fantastical solution that can't actually be produced for an affordable price.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we want to run through some common print methods used by designers. We've got offset, which can be bespoke, or batch. They're the two. There's a subcategory in there. We'll go into a little bit of detail in just a second. Then we've got digital, which is generally a short-run option. And then letterpress, which is also a short-run option. So we'll break down each of these in a little bit of detail and explore the advantages and the disadvantages to help you choose the right fit for your project, because not all print projects are a match to a certain process. You've got to think about which process is going to suit this budget, project, and outcome the most. So let's break them down.
Okay, so the first one is offset, which is the print technique that we use the most throughout our design careers. So we look at it in two different ways. There's bespoke offset printing, and then there's batch or gang offset printing. So bespoke is basically when you're dealing directly with your printer and they're printing your job individually on the press just for you. They set it all up. They set up the plates. They set up the colours. If you've got your specific Pantone colours specified, it's your paper that you've specified. It's very bespoke to you, right?
Yeah,
So
it's a beautiful process. It's the
It is.
preferred option when budget allows, I have to say. But
Yeah.
often budget doesn't allow for that high level of tailoring,
yeah.
you know? So, yeah.
And do you know what? I feel so privileged that we were designing through a time where that was the only option.
Yes, I know. I love that, Kris. I love that clarity. It was the only option, really.
Yeah.
If you wanted accuracy and consistency, it
Well-
was the only option.
They just didn't have the level of technology that they do now for the other options.
Yeah, like digital processors way back when were
Yeah.
nothing better than your local photocopier.
Yeah, they might have had somebody with a fancy laser printer.
Yeah.
But you didn't have any other options other than offset. And so every project was bespoke. And the way that we saved money for our clients in their printing costs was we would do 1 and 2 colour jobs. And so we do beautiful duotones, and it made for a really interesting aesthetic back in the day.
Yeah, it really
Yeah.
did. It really did. And you got really good at saving money for your client because you wanted to use really great paper.
Yeah.
So we had great relationships with paper suppliers. We were on the phone to them and we were able to say, you know, what's rolling out? What can we have access to? You know, and they knew the type of work that we were doing. They knew the type of paper that we wanted to use. So
Yeah.
I'm going off on a tangent. So I'll
Yeah.
bring myself back in.
No,
we'll
it's-
circle back. But it
it's
was
good.
such a beautiful time. It
Yeah.
was really, really special. And we were collaborating. We're always collaborating with our print supplier, our paper supplier, our client, and ourselves. It was such a beautiful part of the process. It never got tired at the end because that's where the project came to life. You know, so we were so excited to get to that stage.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
Yeah.
Just on the paper thing, we'd also ask what the sheet size was for a particular paper, and then we'd not
Yes.
want to waste any of it. And because there was always offcuts, and we'd be thinking, oh, what can we do with that little offcut? Okay, extra little promo cards, or we'll do some bookmarks because there's this big skinny bit down the side.
There are a lot of bookmarks, a lot of little DLs and things like that. And essentially we were creating our own gang, weren't we?
We were.
We were creating our own batch because
Yeah.
we were maximising the paper size.
Yeah, which might explain what gang printing is. That's a really nice segue into offset gang printing. So, you know, the companies worldwide that have really affordable printing. In Australia, we've got fast printing and there's a few others.
Vista print.
Yeah, those sorts of things, which are worldwide as well. Moo cards, that they're
Yeah,
worldwide.
yeah.
You know, how do they do it so cheap? So what they do is they are using offset printing. They're using beautiful offset printing, usually CMYK, not usually Pantone. But what they do is they take your project, so your business card or your postcard or whatever it is, and then they lay it out on the big sheet of paper. So everything's printed on a big sheet of paper, goes through the press. They lay out your business card or postcard with a whole bunch of others. And so yours is printed at the same time as maybe 30 other people's postcards.
Yeah.
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 So that's how they do it cheaply. So that is gang printing. So it's still really lovely quality often. Sometimes you'll have colour variations.
Yeah, because it depends on where you sit on the plate, right?
does.
So the offset process is they use plates, ink rollers, and a big rubber blanket that to transfer an image onto the paper, right? So with the first time you do a print run with a batch printer like that, you might be top left corner and you love the quality, it's beautiful, it's great. The next time that you send your work off for print, it might be a reprint. You need more because it's a success, right? So the next time that happens, your artwork might be smack bang in the centre and the ink distribution might be that little bit heavier there, right? So that means that the quality is compromised slightly because there is a bit of variation. So that consistency, I should say, is compromised because of that slight variation. And I guess the quality as well because, you know, we're wanting to present this really beautiful, consistent image. So there is a little bit of risk with that, but it's very slight. And honestly, with really discerning eyes, you would pick it up, but a lot of people wouldn't. So it's not a huge risk.
Yeah, well, we've definitely had that problem happen in the past where there's been the colour's been thrown by something else on the gang. Like there might be a really heavy saturation of magenta right next to where you've got your yellow thing.
Yeah.
And it does throw the colour. It's funny.
Yeah.
And we've had clients who've said, this is different. This is
Yeah.
different. So then you have to address that. Well, and you get out ahead of that sort of thing. We used a gang printer because it's affordable, and we explain all that beforehand, before it goes to print, because you give them the option. You say, do you want affordable printing?
Yeah.
Because there can be discrepancies. There can be variations with the result. It probably won't be noticeable, but there is that risk.
Yeah, and it might be. Like we have had clients say that there is a variation. So to get out ahead of that, a pro tip would be to make sure you include that in your proof sign-off. This is going to be printed on gang printing, batch printing, whatever, and it may not be able to be replicated with complete accuracy in the future, just so they know that, and make sure that it's a little initial so that they have to sign it and accept that as a condition for this reduced rate printing is that we cannot completely ensure accuracy. Whereas with that beautiful bespoke approach, you get to really have that same job printed, the same plate, the same press. There is a variation, like the humidity might be different on a particular day. It might be raining the first day you print and the next day you print. It might be in summer and it might be a dry day. There are slight variations, but seriously, without being in a scientific lab, it will be as accurate as it possibly can be when it's bespoke, because it's your plate going to press again with your colours going to press again. And like Kris said, there's no weird colours butting up against it. You've not been moved around on the plate, so you're not in a different spot now. So it really is the best way to ensure brand consistency and getting those colours just right, especially when you're dealing with Pantone colours.
Yeah.
You know, you really can ensure, but you can be confident. You can say to your clients, we're going to get this as accurate as possible using this print process. It's that simple.
And it really should be accurate. And it does depend on the paper. So you've got all different types of paper. You've got uncoated stocks, you've got matte stocks, you've got satin stocks, you've got glossy coated stocks. Then you've got coatings, which then throw the colours as well. They can change the colours. There's so many aspects to print. But the benefits of working with a bespoke printer, so once again, just any printer that is in your town or city and you forge a working relationship with them, they're likely to hold on to your print plates. So for future reprints, they'll hold on to embossing blocks, they'll hold on to die cuts for you. And that also helps your clients to have more affordable printing in the future as well, because those are sort of initial setup costs and they don't have to pay for those again because the printer will hold them for them. So yeah, I think there's so many benefits. Quality control is a big, big one. You do everything you can to make sure that the print quality is as best as it can be. And we have had glitches, and we've had printers who have blamed the weather and all sorts of things, you know, and you kind of just believe them. But somebody's got to be accountable eventually. And we've had some print projects go wrong. We have.
Yeah.
And then
absolutely.
And then the printer will come to the party and reprint.
Yeah. And if you have a really good relationship with your printer, even if you go to print with something, there is a mistake and it is your problem, not the printer's problem, but your problem. There's been a mistake, something hasn't been proofread properly, the client's picked it up at the last minute, or you have. I've been on press and I've picked up problems where I've seen it coming off the press and I've noticed something, we have to run it again. The printer, if you are in a relationship with them, they're usually really accommodating and they're really caring and they help you out. They usually do a discounted, new plate and things like that. So they want to help you. They want repeat business, right? They want you to come back. So they want to be in this beautiful relationship. Well, they certainly did when we were printing a lot back in the day.
Yes.
But it's all about that really beautiful, clear communication. So the pros for bespoke or even gang offset printing are that they're really great for keeping unit costs down because they're really great for really high volume runs. So the cost per item then is really small, whereas digital printing, which we'll get into in a second, the cost per unit is going to be the same no matter how many you print.
Yeah.
So it can be actually more expensive depending on the amount that you need. So that's a pro. Yay, we're after the pros for bespoke offset printing. We'd like to see more of it.
Depending on the collateral or what we were getting printed, a general rule of thumb was, anything above 1,000 you'd be definitely doing offset.
Absolutely,
And then anything under 1,000 you'd be considering digital.
Yeah. That's a good rule of thumb. Yeah.
And the higher quantities that you get printed, you can just see the per unit cost just drop.
Yeah.
It really gets very economical when you're getting up to those 10,000 print runs and the 20,000 print runs. But they're the scariest when you have the mistakes.
Yeah, they're so scary because, when you've got 20,000 of these puppies out there. So, you do have to make sure that you have lots of checks in place, which we'll go through in just a minute as well. We'll make sure that you are covered off. That's really an important part of the process.
Yeah, but always get a range.
Yeah.
So even if your client says, I want 500, get a quote for 500, 1,000, 2,000. And oftentimes it's not much more to get the 2,000. They just don't realise it.
Yeah.
So it's always interesting to see the range.
Yeah. I used to love it when you go, look per unit, we're down to 10 cents. Now that's affordable.
Yeah, exactly.
And I can have my die cut and I can have my this, that and the other. So, look, it's all about open communication with your printer and getting all of those quotes and understanding all of those bits and pieces that we've been talking about. So another common printing process is the digital printing land, which is really incredible right now. Like, we did not have this as an option, like Kris said earlier. It's a really great on-demand option, short-run option, and you can get some really beautiful high-quality printing done on really beautiful paper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And finishes as well.
Yeah, like embossing, gold foiling, varnishes, all of those beautiful things that were really reserved for offset printing are now in this beautiful playground of digital short-run printing. It's incredible.
Yeah, you could never have that with short runs before.
No.
Yeah. But just something to watch with short run digital printing is that you can have issues with colour matching. Also, if you pick a beautiful uncoated paper, digital printing tends to sit on the surface a little bit more. So it actually then ends up looking a bit shiny where it's printed. So if you have very large solid masses of a colour in digital printing, it'll look almost like it's glossy in that section. So it'll really sit up on top of the grain of the paper.
Yeah.
So that might not be the look that you're going for.
Yeah, that brings us to why paper selection is critical, even in digital printing. So with offset printing, the ink sits on the surface of usually coated paper stocks where it bounces off and it reflects off. And usually if you're using uncoated paper, it soaks into the paper. Whereas with digital, even with uncoated, it sits more on the surface. Not as much, but it does sit on the surface a little bit more to have that sort of shiny option there that Kris was describing. So really understanding what is going to happen, especially if you've got big patches of colour, what's best is to always do a sample, especially with a digital run. You can do a little sample. It's so inexpensive to be able to do that and go, oh, look at that, and I'm not happy with that. I might pull back on that. I might push that. It's really a great way to go to be able to, test it out.
Yeah, and why digital is more affordable and you're able to do those little tests is there's no plates involved. They might have a file setup fee, and that can vary from like $50 to maybe higher, depending on the printery. But with offset printing, the setup fee is much, much bigger because there's more mechanics involved. There's actual big sheets, big plates that need to be set up. And when you're using Pantone, that's an extra setup as well. There's no way that you could do just like a one-off sample of a job.
Yeah.
With going in to do a press check for a bespoke offset job, you can pause the printer, though. You can pause the project and say, stop the presses.
Yeah. You can stop the presses and you can make a plate change. And the plate change is expensive.
It is.
So supply the artwork again. Then there's time. Plates don't just happen immediately. The plate will have to be made. I think it's faster now, though. I think it got faster and faster. But still, it's time. It's a process. New plates would have to be then set up on the press. It's a process, so be mindful of that.
Yeah, we've even tweaked the colour on the press before. And even though Pantone is a set formula, we've even tweaked a Pantone before. They've just added a little bit of this or removed a little bit of that.
Yeah.
And just to get the right balance of what we were looking for. So,
yeah, you can go heavier with the ink as well. You can just say, can we just go a little bit heavier? I want it to be a little bit more saturated. So there's things you can do. Not a lot, but there are things you can do. You can play.
I just wanted to mention one more benefit. Going back to offset again, we get excited about offset, even though we've gone into digital land. One thing that you can do is when you're working with some of the bigger printers, they have big presses. So not just a 4-color press. So a 4-color would be CMYK. They have bigger presses, and then you can run an extra, you can do CMYK plus a couple of Pantones. You can do, like, you could actually blend into the magenta of the CMYK. You could blend a Pantone fluorescent pink, and you get the most incredible, vivid printing that way. I've had so much fun doing that in the past. You could add in a metallic into the print run.
So good.
Yeah.
So good. I'm so glad you remembered to mention that, Kris. And the finishes and varnishes and things you can also add when you've got a printer who's got a 910 print process. It is incredible. It's incredible, the playground that you're in. And again, I just want to keep coming back to when you have a relationship with the printer, they are excited about their equipment, right? They're like, this thing is amazing. You should see what this thing can do. And they want you to be a part of it. They want to see what projects can come from this beautiful machine. So yeah, understand what capabilities your printer has.
Yeah, that's right.
So let's have a little chat about letterpress. I don't think we could have a podcast on printing without the inclusion of the original, the OG printing method, letterpress. Yeah. We love ourselves some letterpress.
Oh, it's so beautiful and such a classic.
It is such a classic. It's so gorgeous. So basically, it's a process that uses raised metal plates to press an image onto the paper, and it creates a kind of debossed effect. And it's really beautiful and tactile. The paper's usually really thick and lovely cotton rag, and it just has that really beautiful feel to it, which is something as a designer I'm very attracted to. Yes. I love that.
Yes. Yes, and I think that paper quality is what makes it so special. And with letterpress, they can only use that kind of beautiful paper. It won't work unless they have that beautiful, toothy, gorgeous feeling paper. Yeah. Which we love so much.
We love it, like watercolour paper. And it's really thick and beautiful and feels elegant to touch. And letterpress is often used for high-end stationery, wedding invitations, really beautiful high-end communication. It's special. You know, when you receive something that has been printed on a letterpress, you've received something special. They've put some thought into this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's beautiful for business cards. If you're going old school and you're going to some networking things, having some letterpress business cards, just beautiful. Yeah. And there are some cons, though, with it. There are some downsides to it. Well, there's limitations, really.
Yeah.
You can't use it for all projects. There's certain designs that are going to be too complex for letterpress, and the letterpress printer will let you know that. Like, I've had some designs that just couldn't work.
Yeah.
Like lines that were too fine, or it was too complicated, couldn't work, or too much solid printing sometimes doesn't work too, or you'll get a very kind of blotchy effect, which is part of the charm of letterpress. Sometimes it can really work in your favour, but sometimes not. And also for photographs.
Yeah. Does not work for photographs. Yep. So, there are some cons, and it's one of the slowest and most expensive options. So the turnaround time is often slower because it's quite manual. And, it isn't manual as in that somebody's not standing there doing it themselves.
Some do.
Some still do,
yeah.
We used to take our students to a beautiful distillery in Sydney as an excursion, and we would get to watch this beautiful letterpress process actually happen in real life in front of us. And it was really great for the students to see a project from start to finish and see it come through right off the plate. It was incredible. It was so much fun to do. And the beautiful old letterpress printers were absolutely impeccable. The condition of these printers was just outstanding. And the thunk, thunk, thunk as they would go through and they would land in their hands, it was incredible. Such a beautiful process, such a tactile process, as well as the tactile end result. The process itself was really beautiful as well.
Yeah. Now, if you haven't had the opportunity to do that in your career, or if you are self-taught or your university or institution didn't take you to a printer like that, We really highly recommend you reach out to printers that you're interested in and say, I would love to see behind the scenes. Could you take me on a tour? And get educated. They will love it. Printers will love to show off all their equipment. They spend millions of dollars on their printing equipment and they're really proud of it.
And so they should be, because they have invested so much money in their equipment. Just like the distillery I mentioned before, they have invested an enormous amount of money in classic, beautiful equipment like the Gutenberg presses. And they've got them lined up, not just one, but a few of them. And they're worth thousands and thousands of dollars. So there's a lot of time and money invested in getting that press, you know, in pristine order to create this classic bespoke response to your work. It's just so impressive.
Yeah, and maintaining that equipment, maintaining that beautiful old equipment, and it's an honour to be able to use that. It's a privilege.
Absolutely. I love that you said that, Kris. That's how it felt, I think, when we were standing around watching this work come to life on this beautiful machinery, and such incredible state of the art for its time and still being used now today, all those years later. I think it was like in 1040 that this is. Let me just check that fact.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, here it is. Movable type printing was first invented in China using ceramic type in AD 1040. Right, during the Northern Song dynasty. There you go, there's a little bit of information. Whereas the Gutenberg is credited with the development in the West in about 1440, so 400 years later. So there you go. That's when the Gutenberg press came into life.
Just a little bit of trivia for you. You know how when you're typesetting your work and you're adjusting the leading in Illustrator or InDesign, that is called leading because they were actual pieces of lead that went into the press to make the space in between the lines of text. So there you go. That's why it's called leading.
Yeah. We'll be good at a trivia night for designers. Okay, let's get back on track. We've just gone off on a little rabbit hole there.
I knew this would happen with this podcast episode because we are so passionate about print and we get excited about it. Can you tell? Can you tell we're like little kids in a candy store about print? Yeah.
We could talk about it for hours and hours, honestly.
We actually could, and we've just discovered we're going to split this into two, actually.
Yes.
We're going to wrap this one up in a little bit, but we'll do a part two because we have still so much more to say.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's wrap up the print processes that we've just talked about. Okay, so when you have to choose the right method, consider these factors. These are good little check boxes to go through. Quantity. Like Kris said, make sure you get a quote for multiple quantities to double check where that lands. So for offset, it'll be your large runs. Digital will be more short runs. Letterpress, definitely short run. But what is the quantity? That's going to give you an indication of where your quoting journey needs to start. Then budget. Okay, what budget does your client have? And they have to talk about money. And a really big pro tip, when you are talking to a designer about their branding project, when they give you a budget and they say, we've got $10,000 for this budget or $5,000 for this budget, the follow-up question to that is, does that include your print production budget?
Yeah.
And they'll go, oh, yes, well, that's my entire budget. Okay, so your design budget is going to be X, and this is the bit that will allocate to print, and you have to manage that. So that's a bit of a pro tip for budget.
Yeah.
But offset is cheaper if it's a really large quantity project, like we've been saying.
Cheaper per unit.
Per unit, yep. Digital will be more cost effective on smaller short runs. And the batch offset printing will be cheaper for small runs as well. You can get it a little bit cheaper that way. So what's the budget? Get your client to be clear on that.
Yeah, another thing to consider is the speed. How quickly do you need this thing? So we have done this before when a client has really needed something urgently. We have just printed a short run of digital just to get them across the line. But then the aim is to do the offset printing after that, just to get them to this event or get them through a launch or whatever it is. So, yeah, digital printing is really fast.
Yeah.
You can get it like overnight or 2 days. Yeah, it's really great like that. But offset is a longer process generally. Sometimes, like we were talking about before, if you've got a really good relationship with your printer and you check in with them and say, what can we do? They might be able to pull out a miracle for you. But generally you'd need a good week to allocate for offset printing.
Yeah. 100%. And then that's also the quality as well. Speed and quality sort of go hand in hand, don't they? Both offset and digital can produce really high quality results. And letterpress is really high as well. It's that beautiful tactile experience. But what quality are they after? Are they okay if it's slightly compromised, if it's digital? We know that the Rolls Royce is offset, definitely. But I'm just thinking now, Kris, about the quality of digital these days. It's really high as well. But like we were saying, there are little compromises that you might be making with how the ink sits on the paper and things like that. So it definitely is a little step down from bespoke offset. So.
I'm always a little bit disappointed with digital because I use a lot of uncoated papers, and I know you do too, John. I'm just always a little bit like, and I love Pantone. There's nothing quite like Pantone.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to use offset for Pantone to get that really beautiful, vivid colours. And when you're dealing with certain colours like green, blue, what are the other culprits?
Orange.
Oh, it's just so hard sometimes.
Yeah.
You just end up with a murky kind of result with CMYK.
Yeah.
So if you want to use Pantone, what are you going to use? You have to use offset.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a massive quality issue. Yeah. And then the design complexity that has to enter into the equation as well. Yeah. Offset and digital can handle really complex designs, but like we were saying earlier, letterpress cannot. There's a lot that letterpress cannot do. So it'll be off the table for a lot of projects just instantly because of the complexity of the project.
Yeah. And that's not really a downside of letterpress. It lends itself to simplicity, which can be just so beautiful, and you would be designing for it.
Yeah.
And it's good to know from the outset what you're actually designing for.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we're going to wrap this episode up with how to choose a printer. So this is the last little section that we'll chat about now. And in our next episode, we'll chat about all things getting ready for press.
Yeah, we'll talk about all things production in the next episode.
Okay. So how to choose a printer. Our number one guide when selecting any specialty printer, look at what they've been printing. That's the first thing. What have you been doing?
Yeah.
And are you impressed by the work that they're producing? And is the quality to a standard you are wanting? You know, dive deeper if it is, and ask to look at their extensive portfolio, because chances are they've printed some things in the last 12 months that they're not sharing, and you want to have a look at that. And have they won awards? That tells us that they are pushing themselves for excellence.
Yes, they are really seeking excellence.
Yeah.
That's such a good point, because why would you enter awards unless you're wanting to really push yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So who are they currently printing for, and what have they printed for them, and how's that working out?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they should be really proud of some stuff. They should be like, oh, look at what we did last week. Look what we did last month. And they'll show you.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you like what you're seeing and you're hearing from them, before you engage a printer, there are some key questions that we like to ask. We like to interview our suppliers.
Yeah,
this goes for all of our suppliers really, but some things that we really like to look at are their area of expertise, what projects they're passionate about, what is their quality assurance policy, things like that, and how do they communicate? All these things. So let's give you some key questions to ask during that initial consultation.
Yeah. There's something else. I just want to go back a step here. I think a vibe check is really important with the printer, right? And if you're not getting attention, if you're not getting good customer service, if you're feeling like they're dismissive of you, if they think you're just a silly little designer or whatever, because we've experienced this, where they don't take you seriously, especially if you don't have a lot of experience in business, and if they seem cagey or like you're wasting my time, it's a no.
Yeah,
it's
I
just
love
a
that.
no. Mm-hmm. So once they pass the vibe check and they seem like good people and you want to work with good people, then you can ask these questions.
Oh, I love that, Kris. Absolutely. All right, so these are the questions once that's established. Do you have experience with projects similar to mine? Whatever it is, whether you're doing a brochure or packaging or whatever. And you'll be able to see their portfolio for similar jobs, and that will build the confidence that you are requiring, and you'll know that they've got the ability to do this project, right? But ask them, do they have experience, especially with packaging? If you are a packaging designer, you need a printer who has experience with packaging.
Oh, please do not use a standard printer for packaging.
Yeah.
Definitely definitely use a packaging specialist printer for packaging.
Absolutely. Another question would be, how do you ensure colour accuracy and consistency throughout the printing process?
Yeah.
So what you're doing there is you're discussing their calibration methods and their quality control checks. What do they have in place to check it? Because some printers just let things go to the press. They don't even look at it. We want our printers to look. We want them to see that the saturation is correct. We want them to see that the colours are correct. We want them to be passionate about our project.
Yeah. Another question you can ask is, what is their proofing process like? So do they provide actual press proofs, like so first run off the press, or do they do digital mock-ups, and how accurate are they? Are they really closely matched? So what is that approval process like? Because that's really important in ensuring as accurate as a result as possible for your clients.
Absolutely. It's so important because we don't want any errors to eat into our profit margin.
Yeah.
Right? So what is your typical turnaround time? Another question. What is your typical turnaround time for projects of this size and complexity? If it's a complex one, especially packaging and things like that.
Yeah. I think that's a really important question to ask so that you can then accurately communicate with your clients and set realistic expectations.
Yeah. Perfect.
And then you can blame the printer.
Yeah. Exactly, right. And
the printer says it's going to be 2 weeks.
Yeah. And pro tip, always pop a buffer on whatever the printer says, add a little buffer.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's right. And another question I really like to know is, what papers do they have on supply all the time? So do they have house stocks, house papers that they always have? And that's really handy if you've got a quick turnaround, because that's part of the time-consuming process with print often is waiting for a delivery to come of the paper that you have specified. I'd also want to know who their main paper suppliers are, and I'd want to have swatch books of all the papers that they have on offer as well.
Yeah, really great advice. And we'll go into getting samples of swatch books and things in the next episode, but that's a really great pro tip and great question to ask, because we want to know. We want to know exactly what you've got on hand in case I have a quick fire project that's got to get going. That's right.
A hot tip as well is that if you do use the papers that they have in-house, often the work is cheaper as well. The production is cheaper.
Yeah.
So we would do that sometimes. Okay, what have you got in a gloss? What have you got in a nice satin?
Yeah.
Because we just need to get this as affordable as possible. But what have you got? And usually it's a very nice paper. It's not like you're compromising. It's just they've already got it. They've bought huge amount of it, huge reams of it. And for cheap. And sometimes they get like a fire sale kind of paper supply as well. And it makes the project really cheaper. So you can always ask the question, what have you got? What have you got that's really affordable behind the scenes there? I want to use it.
And your printer will actually say to you, if you've got a great relationship with them, they'll ring you up and they'll say, guess what? We got an awesome deal on this stock. We know you love it. Have you got anything coming up that you want to print that on? And they will be keeping you top of mind as well when they know what type of paper you like to print on. And we were very, very well known for uncoated printing, and every project was pretty much uncoated. So they would know, okay, this is what the girls want, this is what they are excited by, and we would be in communication with them. So have that conversation. I love that. Okay, so another big question to ask them is, how will you communicate with me throughout the printing process?
Yeah.
Discuss the preferred communication methods that they have and make sure it's a fit for your communication style as well, whether it's emails or phone calls or a project management tool that you're using like Trello. We love to use Trello. What ways are they happy to communicate with you? You want to make sure that you are kept informed throughout the whole process, and you want to make sure that you are able to commit to that process as well.
Yeah, you want to be kept in the loop.
Yeah.
Another question that I would be asking is, what are their environmental practices?
Yeah, good one.
Yeah, I just want to know, because there's different standards of practice when it comes to environmental standards in the printing industry, and it can be a very polluting industry. So are they using soy-based inks, for example? What is their approach to toxins and disposal of toxins and all that sort of thing? And some printers, you'll find one in every major city will be an environmental champion, and they will position themselves as an environmental printer. And you will pay more for those printers, but with the larger print runs, you really won't notice much of a difference with using a really beautiful, sustainable printer. So ask about their sustainability and environmental practices.
Yeah, and it might be something that your client is really passionate about. It might be something that they actually want to speak to on their printed collateral, where they actually mention the footprint of whatever it is they're printing. So we used to do that all the time in our annual reports. We'd talk about where we printed it, what stock it was printed on, the impact of that stock to the environment. And it was a really beautiful part of their messaging and their commitment to the environmental sustainability. That was a really beautiful way to actually speak to it in a really subtle way, but it was there so that their clients knew that they were very conscious about this. And I love that. That's great.
You can actually make it part of your brand as well. It's like, I'm not actually going to use suppliers that don't meet these expectations.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm only going to use the best environmental printers available. So that could be a beautiful positioning for you as well.
Yeah. A few more questions that you could ask. Can you provide references and testimonials? Because we can see a print piece done and dusted, and there it is. We can hold it in our hands, but the testimonials will speak to the process. The testimonials will speak to the experience, and we want to know how it is dealing with these people. Like, are you beautiful people to deal with? Are you easy? Are you considered? Are you detailed? Are you all the things that are necessary for a relationship with a print supplier? So we want testimonials and references more so than just product samples.
Yeah. Love it. Another question. Do you offer wholesale rates to design professionals?
Mm-hmm.
And this is really important to know as well, because depending on your business model, you may want to mark up the printing. You may want to run the printing through your business. You may want to add a print management fee, or you might even arrange with the printer that you're going to actually give the wholesale rate to your clients because you're giving such a big volume of printing to them that you want to pass that on to them. So there's lots of different ways you can do it.
And we'll talk about those in the next episode because we actually step out the different ways and a bit of a checklist for each way that you can handle the print production. So
love it.
Yeah.
And then finally, what are your payment terms?
Yes.
So is it payment up front? Do they offer accounts? Could your clients get an account with them, for example? Are the terms 7 days, 30 days, 30 days from the end of the month? What is the situation? So we actually encourage that clients should pay for printing upfront. We'd love this to become industry standard worldwide, and that's what we always did in our businesses.
Yes.
Well, we didn't at first, and it was very painful.
Yes.
It was very painful. Don't follow that very painful lesson of having thousands and thousands of dollars outstanding to a printer and having to rely on the client to pay you so that you could pay the printer. That's just a terrible way to run a design business. Don't ever do it.
Don't do it. We both did it individually in our businesses, and we were like a credit line for our clients because we had paid a ridiculously excessive print bill, like $50,000 and $60,000 print bill for a big company whose payment terms were like 60 days or 90 days, and we're sitting there waiting and we've paid the printer, and essentially we were a credit line for that business. So we put a stop to that. Payment upfront for printing, and printing doesn't commence until it's paid for. It's that simple. It doesn't commence. So the more they delay the payment, they delay their printing. It's that simple. Like Kris said, please let that be industry standard. Pay for your printing before it actually hits the press.
Yeah, love it. So hopefully that gives you a really good run through of the basic printing types and liaising with a printer. We're going to get into even more stuff in the next episode, so stay tuned for that. We love print. It's clear. We just love print. But you can see that having a really good relationship with your print suppliers is really important.
Yeah. And clear communication with your printer is everything. So developing that beautiful relationship is key because they are on your side, you know?
Yeah.
So beautiful, designers. That brings us to the end of this episode, and we will be bringing out episode 2 down the track, which will cover all of those beautiful production tips that we were talking about, that we've alluded to.
Yeah, it'll be a good one. All right, we'll see you then.
Okay, bye.
Bye.